Today, Bitcoin officially hit the $40,000 mark, an incredible achievement for what was years earlier a worthless internet coin. One of the biggest BTC investors, Chamath Palihapitiya, sat down with CNBC today to discuss this recent explosion in price. In today's video, we examine his comments and look into his predictions regarding Bitcoin, summarizing with an explosive prediction of our own. Here is the clip from the interview.
All right, Chamath, we don't have that much time left. Let's talk rocket ships. First, Bitcoin. That falls into that category because that's what that is. 39,000. Where's it going?
I mean, can you play the clip in 2012 and 13 when it was at 200 and everybody was laughing at me on CNBC every time I would talk about Bitcoin? Where is it going? It's probably going to 100, then 150, then 200,000. In what period? I don't know. 5 years, 10 years, but it's going there. And the reason is because every time you see all of this stuff happening, it just reminds you that, wow, our leaders are not as trustworthy and reliable as they used to be. And so just in case, we really do need to have some kind of, insurance we can keep under our pillow that gives us some access to an uncorrelated hedge. And it's going to eventually transition to something much more important. But for right now, you're just getting all these data points that prove this thing. It's just the fabric of society is frayed. And until we figure out how to make it better, it's time to just have a little schmuck insurance on the side. And everybody's running in. It's just an incredible thing. I could never have imagined it.
Chamath claims that Bitcoin is going to 100K, then 150K, and will eventually settle above $200,000. Although he doesn't give us a timeline, it's still surprising to hear a respected billionaire investor claim these price targets. Here's a chart of Bitcoin price since its inception. The first wave of crypto mania occurred back in late 2017 when the price of Bitcoin went from around $1,000 a coin to nearly $16,000. Next came a big crash, which led to a period of sideways actions for years. Sometime around August of 2020, we saw Bitcoin price jump up again, and a tsunami wave of inflows followed. This massive market move quickly saw the price jump up to a record high of $40,000 a coin. At these prices, the Bitcoin market cap, or the value of all Bitcoins in the world, was around $800 billion. If you listen to Chamath speak about Bitcoin, you will see that he respects it mostly as a store of value, a way of protecting yourself against uncertainty. At the end of the day, our money is only valuable because of the trust we have in the United States Mint. This is why you will see many people look to precious metals like gold as a way to diversify wealth. This brings us to the great comparison: gold versus Bitcoin. As of today, there are approximately 2.5 billion ounces of gold in the world above the ground. Nearly half of it is owned by central governments. This represents a market cap that is estimated to be around 10 trillion, or 10% of what Bitcoin currently is. We can get quite a good estimate of the future max value of Bitcoin price by looking at these market cap comparisons. Let's assume Chamath is right and Bitcoin reaches $200,000. At that point, it would have a market cap of approximately $4 trillion, or 40% of the current gold market cap. I find this figure unlikely. Look at gold prices in the last 100 years. The huge spike in gold prices started right around the time when the Bretton Woods Agreement collapsed in 1971 and the US paper dollar couldn't be converted into gold anymore, a clear sign of the decline in the dollar's purchasing power since the move into a pure fiat money system. It's clear that cryptocurrencies partially fit the definition of fiat money. They may not be legal tender yet, but they are also not backed by any sort of physical commodity. And while total supply is artificially constrained, that constraint is just, artificial. On top of this, gold is one of the most liquid assets in existence. You can convert it into cash on the spot, and its value is not bound by national borders. Gold is gold. Anywhere you travel in the world, you can exchange gold for whatever the local currency is. On top of this, have you seen the Bitcoin chart? Will players be able to handle its volatility? Would you store your wealth into something that has less than 20 years of history, lives artificially on the internet, and has a mysterious origin? Just take a look at this Warren Buffett clip. You can get a sense of what he thinks about the mysterious asset and how he believes it's essentially an excuse to move money around illegally.
Lucas writes in, he said, did Justin Sun change your mind on cryptocurrencies? For anybody who doesn't know, Justin Sun bought the dinner or the lunch that you just had from the last Glide Foundation fundraiser. He is actively involved in Bitcoin. After that meeting, his PR people put out some notes saying that, you know, you kind of listened to cryptocurrency and maybe you're a little more in tune with the idea of Bitcoin now.
Well, I would say this. When Justin and 4 friends came, they behaved perfectly, and we had a good 3.5-hour dinner, and the whole thing was a very friendly exchange of ideas. But cryptocurrencies basically have no value, and they don't produce anything. So you can look at your little ledger item for the next 20 years, and it says you've got X of this cryptocurrency or that. It doesn't reproduce. It doesn't deliver. It can't mail you a check. It can't do anything. And what you hope is that somebody else comes along and pays you more money for it later on. But then that person's got the problem. But in terms of value, zero.
So it sounds like he did not change your position.
No, but I didn't change his either. And I had a very pleasant dinner, and those people they behaved more than well. And they gave Justin gave $4.6 million to Glide, and that will buy a lot of meals and provide a lot of beds for people in San Francisco. So I thank him.
He gave you some Bitcoin. What's it feel like to be a Bitcoiner?
I don't have any Bitcoin.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
No.
You don't own Bitcoin?
No, I do not own one. I don't own any cryptocurrency. I never will. And in the end, I may start a war on currency. Maybe I can create one, and I'll say there's only going to be 21 million of them, and you can have a little ledger sheet from me and everything that says you have it, and you can have it after I die, but you can't do anything with it except sell it to somebody else. And the interesting thing, of course, is that Bitcoin's been out there a long time, and people talked about how it would be used in various kinds of exchange, but none of our companies are doing business in Bitcoin or anything. Bitcoin has been used, I think, to move around a fair amount of money illegally. So the people
maybe in countries where you have a hard
so
time
the logical move from the introduction of Bitcoin is to go short suitcases, because the money that was taken in suitcases from one country to another, suitcases will probably fall off in demand. I mean, so you can look at that as the economic contribution of Bitcoin to the society.
This is further argued by billionaire investor Ray Dalio, who is well known for his hate for cash. You may think this will make him bullish on Bitcoin, but as it turns out, this couldn't be further from the truth. Just take a listen to this clip from an interview he did with Yahoo earlier this year.
Realize that cash is not a safe investment. It's a very risky investment, and know how to diversify well. And when I mean diversify well, I mean diversify globally, in countries, in markets, and in currencies.
Mm-hmm. How about, do you have a take on digital currencies? This is something a lot of young people talk about. Any view on that?
Digital currencies, let me break them down into 2 types. There's the type in which it's like a Bitcoin type of currency that'll be an alternative currency in terms of its supply, demand, and an alternative storehold of wealth. And then there's digital currencies. That means there'll be other types of currencies, let's say the dollar or the euro or the Chinese renminbi, that is digitalized. Okay, I think we're going to see a lot more of that second type. But I think that there are 3 main problems of the first type, the Bitcoin type of that. Theoretically, it's good, but the 3 basic things are a currency has to be an effective medium of exchange, storehold of wealth, and the governments want to control it. So I today can't take my Bitcoin yet and go buy things easily with it. And as a storehold of wealth, it's so volatile that its volatility based on speculation is so much greater that it's not an effective storehold of wealth, and which is also one of the reasons it's a problem to be a transaction vehicle, because if a vendor says, I'm going to get paid in Bitcoin, and they don't know what that means in terms of their other liabilities, that's a problem. And then thirdly, governments won't, and if it becomes material, governments won't allow it. I mean, they'll outlaw it, and they'll use whatever teeth they have to enforce that. They would say, okay, you can't transact in Bitcoin, you can't have a Bitcoin. So then you have to sort of be almost like, is it a felony? And I'm going to have to be a felon in order to transact. They outlawed gold. What's wrong with gold? But gold was a storehold of wealth. And so if I was to say, what would I prefer, Bitcoin to gold? No, I wouldn't prefer Bitcoin to gold. Gold will be the vehicle. There's either that central banks and countries use as an alternative to the regular cash, because each central bank can print cash. But through time, when countries dealt with each other, they used gold because they didn't have to worry about being devalued by some country that's going to print the gold. And so it still is our third largest reserves, if you take central bank reserves. The largest is the dollar. The second largest is euros. And the third largest is gold. So, so if I'm dealing with classic currencies, I'm really sort of getting into the storehold of wealth domain. That also includes stocks in that storehold of wealth. But I don't think digital currencies will succeed in the way people hope they would for those.
As you can see, the problems with Bitcoin essentially boil down to two things. One being volatility. It's hard to use Bitcoin for transactions or wealth storage when the price moves up and down so violently. Second is the government hate. Even a naturally occurring element like gold, which was used as currency in the past, was outlawed before. Yes, you heard that correctly. Here in the United States, gold was outlawed in 1934 via Executive Order 6102, which forbid the hoarding of gold coins and bars. Later repealed by President Gerald Ford, it still remains as a showcase that governments will do anything necessary to control currency. There is nothing stopping the US from banning Bitcoin. The crypto world has a lot of headwinds, and although I respect Chamath's opinion on nearly everything, I think he's wrong about Bitcoin price. I really think that right now, we are looking at the peak. Maybe if there's a secondary speculation explosion, we could see it hit 100,000, but realistically, I think this is going to be the top for Bitcoin. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, please make sure you hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed.